Natasha, and thank you so much for joining me today. Well, today's focus is going to be kind of around transforming or cutting into background dyes. Now, I have this one today, and this is the Momenta Hexagons, just a really simple kind of background dye that I think we can use in lots of different ways. And I'm going to be using this one in a few different ways in coming videos because background dyes are expensive. They are big, I guess, they're a big dye, and so we want to be able to use these in lots of different ways, and we want to be able to use them in ways that kind of change up the look and change just sort of the blank background nature of this one in particular. So I have one already die cut. Now this is just out of some plain white cardstock at the moment. So to start off with, I have the, this is the Dress My Craft stitched scalloped circle dies. So there are 4 in here. These cut the inside and the outside. So I'm going to run this through with just some plain white cardstock. Just grab a scrap there and cut a piece big enough. And then this is going to give us a gorgeous frame to kind of work with. Now I need the same size circle cut out of the inside of my background die. Now I could fish through and try and find a circle die. I'm sure I have one that matches somewhere, but you know me, I will take a shortcut and I'm just going to use the same die because it's going to cut that outside circle, and that's really all I need. If you wanted to, you could hand cut this and kind of trace around it or something, but I'm just going to run this through the die cutting machine, and then this little bit that we're going to take out of the center that it's cut, this is a great little scrap that can go behind a little bunch of flowers for some texture. It could create, be big enough to, you know, go on the front of a watering can or a pot or something like that to give it texture. Lots of different options we can do with the scrap, so don't throw that away either. Now this is the 4-inch mint tape. I'm going to create a little mask here, and of course, again, I could have just traced around it, but instead I die cut it on the 4-inch mint tape. It's just a any kind of something that you'd like to make a mask. You could use just copy paper and put some temporary adhesive on the back. You could use proper masking paper, but I am just going to peel off the outside. Keep this because we're going to use both the inside and the outside, so positive and negative of our mask, but just remembering that we have cut the die, so I just need to put some extra little pieces there because I want this all to stay together. I just want the circle shape for this, not the frame, so I'm just putting some extra little pieces of the 1-inch mint tape just so that I can keep it all together. Then you can see I lined up my background die with my card front, and I'm going to just pop this sort of in place so that everything is all lined up, because sometimes my die cutting is not perfect. So if I use the actual die cut to make sure that everything's in place, then I know that everything will line up at the end. I am using some shaded lilac, which is just a really light purple in the Distress Oxides. I've got a finger dauber and I am just blending this on in no real fashion, no real skill to this one. I'm not making sure it's perfectly even because I know that the background dye is going to be going over top of this, and that really does distract the eye from any unevenness in my inking. So I'm not too worried about it. I'm going right up to the edge of the mask. I'm sort of going heavier at the edges and then fading in a little bit, but honestly not really. And so then once I want to do the other part, I'm going to line this up so that it is perfectly around the shape that we cut from the middle, the circle from the middle. Make sure the edges meet exactly perfectly, and then gently make sure I seal all around the edge. Then just use this little pokey tool. This is the Kaisercraft tool. It is so cheap and cheerful. I think it's $2.40 or something, and it's amazing. I use this in every single card making session. It is well worth investing in a tool like this or this one or something similar. Now I had put my circle on a little bit wonky, but that's okay, so I'm going to cover up the edges because at this point I really don't want to be ruining anything, so I just add a little bit more. Now for this one I am using the Cherry Blossoms Bunch outline stamp from Altenew. Now I'm going to show you the reason that I picked this stamp. So this one I picked in particular kind of having this technique in mind. So I'm going to stamp out one first. So I'm just putting this on an acrylic block. I'm using some VersaFine Onyx black ink, and because I've never stamped the stamp before, it's brand new, I just use that scrap piece of paper to stamp it out and make sure that there's no, blemishes in the stamp itself or something like that. Now, I'm using this around the edge of the circle, and there's this sort of 3 flowers and one main one that's sort of at the front of the flowers, and those gorgeous leaves that come out either side, and that frames the circle beautifully. Now, here's our options at the top. So you could have 1 flower just like this and the 2 leaves of foliage in there. Turn it slightly like this, and you can have 1 flower plus 1 leaf of foliage coming out either side, which is going to be a smaller flower than the other one, so it's quite nice for balance. Or if you wanted to have exactly the same, then turn it around and you can have the same image, and that beautiful, it all follows the curve of the circle. So in particular, that's what I got this one for. I love this stamp, so I'm looking forward to using it in a few different ways. For this one, I have decided to go with the kind of smaller flower and the 2 bits of foliage coming out each side. So the bottom right is kind of going to be heavier on the foliage, and the top left is a little bit lighter but similar. So anyhow, I am going to add some clear embossing powder to this, just because with me colouring it, this is basically my security blanket, what I do to make sure that I am not going to ruin anything at this point and smudge any ink. Now, these are my alcohol markers. I know you've seen these lots. These are the TriBlend by Spectral Noir, and they are great because there are 3 alcohol markers in each pen, and that means I don't have to do any choosing of colours which are going to blend together and work together. So I am going to take inspiration from the packaging today and go with these kind of blue little cherry blossoms. And so a little bit of purple in the middle, but then all I do is use 1 blue pen and I have 3 colours ready to go. That's what makes my life super easy. Now, these come in a brush or the bullet. My preference is for the bullet point because of the type of colouring I do, but I know that lots of people prefer brush. There is definitely the sets of brush markers that you can buy. You can also buy these individually if there's colours in particular that you are after. I don't believe these are refillable. However, I've had these for I'd love to say at least 2 years now, and never have I had one run out. And now I don't colour absolutely every day with them, but I do quite a bit of colouring with them, and again, I've never had one run dry, I've never had one run out. So yeah, they work really, really well for me, and I love not having to choose different colours. I'm not, alcohol marker colouring is definitely not my forte, and so I need all the help I can get, and I will take it in the form of these pens. So this is what I've got for the minute. And now this is my favorite part, of course. This feels like the reveal, and you can take off your mask and see all of that gorgeous crisp blending, and then we're going to have that perfect transition between the outside colour. I mean, we are going to be covering some of it, so even if it's not perfect, don't worry about it. But I think that's pretty good. I'm pretty happy with how this is so far. I'm not finished completely with a couple of bits on those flowers, but just hold on for that moment. Now, the sentiments in this one are good as well. Again, something I look for. It's got a beautiful image, but it also has useful sentiments. Now, this one is going to say simply, "Thank you, you're amazing." Again, I haven't tried these before. This is a new stamp set to me, so I always stamp off on a scrap piece of paper, just in case there is an imperfection in the stamp, and I would hate to ruin my project at this point just because of that. So I always stamp off, make sure I've got the hang of, got the feel of how I need to pop the stamp down, and then when it comes to putting on the outline here, I'm just going to use some skinny tape. So I'm using tape around the outsides just because I know it's going to be nice and secure, but then I'm actually going to use some liquid glue just in some of those points there to just add a little bit more security and just make sure that none of this bubbles up or anything, so everything is going to stay nice and flat and adhered to the card. No matter whether it has to go through the mail or it's handed to somebody, I want to make sure that the card is nice and secure. So I'm actually going to line this up, make sure I've got it the right way around, and then I'm able to pull out the little bits. I probably could have pulled out some little tabs, would have made my life easier, but I'm going to pull out the outside strips there, and this is going to be adhered down nicely onto my card front, and then everything is kind of coming together really nice. But wait until we put the frame on, and I think you'll agree that this really finishes off the look, the cleanliness of the card. I think this looks stunning as is, But once we pop this frame on, I'm just using a little bit of liquid glue because that way I can really wiggle it into place, and it just fits like a puzzle piece. Everything kind of pops in because we use the same die to create everything. And this way we've used a background die, but we've actually cut into it and changed the shape of it. So I really love that a background die like this, which is a pretty generic pattern, so to speak, gives us some flexibility in how we can change it up, as well as the stamps. The stamps is another thing that we can change the look of how the stamp actually was meant to be. Now, I said earlier on that we weren't quite finished with these flowers. That's why I left the centers blank, but I'm going to take a gold Uni-Ball gel pen, and I'm just going to pop this in the center of the flowers. And then the blossoms also have the little bits that come out of it. They've got little balls there, and I will color those in as well. You can see just here, and the pen does a really nice job. It's going to give a tiny bit of shine to the card, which matches some of the embossing, which is nice. But apart from that, this is just a finishing detail. And that's what's going to finish off our card today. Thank you so much for joining me. As usual, links will be below, as well as a link to the Buy Me a Coffee if you'd like to support my channel.